Hello, I'm Robert Browning. I've written a poem called My Last Duchess, which is quite different to a lot of the other poems in the collection. So I was writing the Victorian period, about maybe 50 years after William Blake wrote London. And we've moved away from that kind of romantic spirit of thinking about nature and freedom to now being much more concerned with morality, with morals and values and things like that. So it's a little bit kind of like Jekyll and Hyde in a way, what people are really like underneath the surface. And what I'm concerned about in this poem, what I'm interested in, is power, and how people can corrupt power. How one man, a duke, can just kill someone like his last Duchess with a simple instruction. So very much a power poem here rather than conflict. So My Last Duchess by Robert Browning. And first of all, it's important to notice that this weird kind of italic description here, Ferrara. Now that's a place in Italy, and this poem is actually kind of based on a guy called the Duke of Ferrara, so a powerful position, a real guy who lived in Italy in the 1500s. So although this poem was written in the past, it's set in an even further past, yeah? So in 1564, he killed his wife, or so it was thought, but of course he got away with it because he's a powerful guy and you can do whatever you want back then. So Robert Browning, who's writing in the Victorian period, is very much looking back at using this example to comment on power and how powerful people get away from anything. It's not so different to today's world, is it really, sadly? But anyway, let's have a read. Oh, and by the way, like, he's a bit of a psycho. So you have to kind of like read it like that because he's so powerful. He's just used to getting what he wants, and there's a murder in here. See if you spot it. That's my last Duchess there, looking on the wall, as if she were alive. That's my last Duchess painted on the wall, looking as if she were alive. I call that piece a wonder now. Frau Pandolf's hands work busily a day, and there she stands. Will it please you sit and look at her? I said Frau Pandolf by design, for never read strangers like you that pictured countenance, the depth and passion of its earnest glance. But to myself they turned, since none puts by the curtain I have drawn for you but I. And seemed as they would ask me, if they durst, how such a glance came there. So not the first of you to turn and ask thus. So 'twas not her husband's presence only called that spot of joy into the Duchess's cheek. Perhaps Frau Pandolf chanced to say, her mantle laps over my lady's wrist too much, or paint must never hope to reproduce the faint half-flush that dies along her throat. Such stuff was courtesy, she thought, and cause enough for calling up that spot of joy. She had a heart, how shall I say, too soon made glad, too easily impressed. She liked whatever she looked on, and her looks went everywhere. 'Twas all one. My favourite her breast, the dropping of daylight in the west, the bough of cherry summer fishes full broke in the orchard for her, the white mule she rode with round the terrace, all and each would draw from her alike the approving speech, or blush at least. She thanked men, good, but thanked her somehow, I know not how, as if she ranked my gift of a 900 years old name with anybody's gift. Who'd stoop to blame this sort of trifling? Even had you the skill in speech, which I have not, to make your will quite clear to such a one, and say, just this or that in you disgusts me, here you miss, or there exceed the mark, and if she let herself be less in tone, or plainly set her wits to yours forsooth, and made excuse, even then would be some stooping, and I choose never to stoop. Oh, sir, she smiled no doubt, whenever I passed her, but who passed without much the same smile? This grew, I gave commands, then all smiles stopped together. There she stands as if alive. Will it please you rise? We'll meet the company below then. I repeat, the count your master's no munificence is ample warrant that no just pretence of mine for dowry would be disallowed, though his daughter's fair self, as I avowed at starting, is my object. No, we'll go down together, sir. Notice Neptune, though, taming a seahorse, thought a rarity, which Klaus of Innsbruck cast in bronze for me. Wow. This guy's mad, okay? Well, mad, powerful, but, you know, it's a fine line, isn't it, all the way through. Now, absolutely make it really clear from the start. Robert Browning is saying that he hates this kind of power. This is a protest, just in the way that lots of these other poems are a protest against the power. Power that dominates, like in, for example, Charged Light Brigade. Power there that dominates people and causes their death just with one quick, stupid instruction, a little bit like this one here from Robert Browning. Quite different poems, I know, but the same kind of message. So, it is, as we said before, a dramatic monologue. Yeah, dramatic, like a play from one perspective. Mono meaning one, like monobrow, monorail one. So a speech from one person's perspective, from the character's perspective here. And it's a conversation, but we never hear what the other guy says. So the other guy is there as a kind of a messenger and emissary from the next Duchess. So My Last Duchess, first of all, makes you think as a reader, first of all, what happened to your last one? And he's quite okay about telling us that he had her killed, basically. It seems like a weird thing to say to somebody who you're trying to set up with for your next Duchess. But there you go, he's powerful, he doesn't care, he can do anything he wants. He has this last Duchess painted on the wall, looking as if she were alive. It's dripping with sarcasm and irony there. It's such a good painting. Oh, she looks like she's alive, but he's had her killed there. So it's almost a kind of like sick in-joke there. I call that piece of wonder now, the artist, this is Fra Brother Pandolf. He was like a monk or something, I guess. Fra Brother Pandolf sounds, work busily a day, and there she stands. And he invites the messenger to sit and look at her. Will it please you? He has this kind of like question that he's asking, but he doesn't really mean it. He's kind of giving an instruction. Anyway, I said Fra Pandolf by design, for never read people like you that expression, but who people asked who the artist was. Now he's kind of showing off. It's like a name drop here. Fra Pandolf is obviously a famous artist. I mean, he's showing off. It's as if you had like a piece of Monet's art in your lounge or something. You'd show it off, wouldn't you? You'd say it's Monet, or a lot of people would. He does the same later with Klaus of Innsbruck, who was actually a real famous artist at the time. But nobody really likes to show off to that extent, so another reason why we hate him. So people have a look at the Duchess's expression and its lovely glance. She has a little kind of Mona Lisa style expression in her look. And people ask him how it happened, how such a glance came there. Now that's a question that really kind of gets to the heart of what the Duke is all about, because she looks happy and everyone says, oh, was it you that made her happy? Was she looking at you in the picture? And it wasn't him. And he feels insanely jealous for some reason about the way that she looks in this picture. Okay, so people were complimenting here, and there's all this stuff here that isn't like massively important for us here. But then you get to the really kind of strange bit, the way it's written here. She had a heart, how shall I say? Notice how he breaks off from his sentence here. Structurally, he's kind of like losing it. It breaks up a little bit here, the sentence with the dashes, which is a little bit like his mind as well. He's starting to get disturbed by it. He says that she was too soon made glad, too easily impressed. She liked everything. Now normally these are kind of good qualities for people. If people are appreciative and happy of the simple kindnesses that people do in their life, that's a good thing. But the Duke doesn't want that. To him it's everything the same. Yeah? His favour, somebody bringing her some cherries, the horse that she loves riding round, yeah? Everything, she has the same reaction. She thanked men, yeah, good, and he does acknowledge that's an okay thing. But then he gets crazily jealous. He thinks she should be the only one, the only person that she wants to thank. His gift, which is his name, yeah? The Duke of Ferrara, that's another reason why we have it there. By marrying her, he thinks that's such a massive compliment that she's in his family now with all the wealth and privilege and status that he has. That should be somehow much better, and she should react better than anybody else's gift. So there's a crazy possessive jealousy about that here. And again, you can see the breaking down of it. We get the exclamations in here as well. We don't have much of that in the other poems here. He's got the same kind of arrogance here as Ozymandias, yeah? King of Kings, I'm better than everyone else. My gift of a 900-year-old name. Very similar characters, and of course both poets saying that this is a bad thing. That power corrupts people, and they have these horrendous influences, yeah? He then talks a little bit about how what he maybe could have done. He maybe could have told her and said that you disgust me here on there, and that maybe she will be less than so. She will change for him, make excuses and change. But he can't even be bothered with that. He says even there would be some stooping, some kind of going down to her level, and I choose never to stoop. The unbelievable arrogance of that kind of expression, that kind of phrase, is unbelievable. And then you get the most subtle and terrifying section of probably the whole poetry collection here. This grew, I gave commands, then all smiles stopped together. He's had her killed. Not directly, yeah? He just gives a command and somebody kills her on his behalf. It's a bit like what we say about a lot of these poems. The people at the top don't actually kill people themselves. Hitler didn't actually physically kill anybody in person, but he was incredibly powerful because he gave the instructions that led to millions of people being killed. And Browning hates this kind of power, being in control of just a few people. Okay? There she stands as if alive. He repeats it again. He's almost like sickly joking about it here. And then he talks a little bit about the next Duchess, the Count who the messenger is there on the behalf of. He talks about him a little bit, and he says, no, it's the daughter that I'm after. It's nothing to do with the dowry, with the money. It's his daughter that I'm after. And then there's a bit that is just as worrying as anything that's come before, really. At the end, on the way down, he points out other works of art. For example, a statue of Neptune taming a seahorse, which he has in a kind of bronze statue here. Okay, Neptune, kind of the god of the sea. And it's almost as if this Duchess, who was a real person, has just become another work of art. Yeah? And that's absolutely terrifying. Lots of people make a lot of fuss about the kind of metaphor here as well, that he considers himself a god taming something, perhaps. The Duchess here could be the tamed seahorse, perhaps, this beautiful thing that he's in control of. He'd like, I think, to see himself as a kind of god here, and again, as a name dropping of the artist there. So it's a bit of a worry. Now, in terms of comparisons, we've spoken about Ozymandias a little bit, Charge of the Light Brigade a little bit in terms of that. But you've also got something very interesting here, which is that somebody uses their power to turn a human into a work of art. And he prefers her like that, kind of because she can't answer back. Absolutely terrifying. We have lots of other poems where people are turned into works of art for one reason or another. War photographer, obviously. What an interesting comparison could be if you're going for a top grade. That there again we have real lives made into photographs. In that poem, of course, people are desensitized to this. But what an interesting link that could be, for one. Okay? So we get other poems, for example, like Tissue, which explores power in a different way, and how power can sometimes not only be humans, but actually paper and documents and things like that as well. You could also think of this very much in the style of London and Blake, who, by talking about the blood running down the palace walls, for example, shows how terrifying it can be when people in power make decisions that have life and death consequences. As a dramatic monologue, it makes lots of different comparisons to lots of other poems as well. It's very different to a lot of the other poems as well. It's very forthright, very focused on the individual. Again, you could talk about London for that, and how one person reveals themselves to be, well, a bit of a nightmare really through what they say, in the same way that we have Percy Shelley quoting Ozymandias on the statue of "My name is Ozymandias." Those two poems could be very, very well linked. You look at Ozymandias as well, he says that, for example, "Look on my works, ye mighty," and here you have a duke who is showing his works of art to other people as well. Ozymandias is brought down eventually, and Robert Browning, of course, is trying to show us that this is not how it should be, and that people, just because they're perhaps in a position of power, they're not necessarily good. Quite often it's the opposite, a little bit Jekyll and Hyde like. Hope that helped.